Hi everyone, welcome to part 2. Okay, Anand has just played c5 and we're looking at why that weakens a8 and so on. So white's strategy from here on is clearly on the light central squares, and Carlsen continued with knight e4s. A nice central square for the knight. So king g7 from Anand, stop any checks. Knight g5 came anyway. And now it's pretty clear that black should advance on the queen side with his pawn majority there. So Anand continued with b5, and Carlsen tried the slightly risky e3, which does make some positional sense because he should challenge the black pawns, and his rook is ready for play down the e file on e1. But it does also create some weaknesses after d takes e3, rook takes e3, notably the d3 pawn. And Anand has played this with great precision, and he still enjoys a slight advantage here. So bishop d4 is what he played first, so rook e2. And we can see what Carlsen is trying to do here. Now there's no way for Anand to prevent the creation of a weak pawn on e6. And that white should be able to attack, and it's true that white has to try and do something, but already at this stage it was clear from Carlsen's body language that he was not happy with how the game had gone. So Anand now continued with his plan c4. So next to him, knight takes e6, f takes e6, and we have an opposite colored bishop game, which can be very dangerous for the side on the defensive, which is Carlsen in this instance. However, as I said, he does own the a file here, which counts for a lot, and he has the e6 pawn to attack now as well. So he absolutely has to activate his pieces, or he's in danger of getting mowed down. So he played bishop e4. If instead d takes c4, then b takes c4, and this b pawn is not going to last long. So bishop e4. That's what he played, and after c takes d3, rook d2. He doesn't have to take the pawn straight away, he can add pressure and build up to that anyway. If he plays bishop takes d3 now, black is going to remain a pawn ahead. Bishop takes f2 check, king takes f2, rook takes d3, and definitely good winning chances from here. So rook d2, and now queen b4, attacking the rook as well as the b2 pawn. So it's a very tense position now to be faced with for Carlsen, given the open f file, the attacking power of this dark squared bishop, and the fact that his queen is on this crazy square h1. So he continued calmly with rook a d1, and Anand snapped off the pawn. Bishop takes b2. An interesting alternative was rook f8, adding pressure to f2, and this d4 bishop is just an absolute monster. He's got pressure all over the white position. It's impossible to neutralize. Best play continues. Bishop takes d3, and now queen d6, threatening queen takes g3. This pawn is pinned obviously, so it can't recapture, and this more or less forces queen e4. So queen takes g3 check, and now queen g2, queen takes g2, king takes g2, and a big edge for black. Rook f4 can come next, and doubling on the file against the f pawn. e5 can be played if the bishop ever moves. So it's one possibility that Anand could have played, but he had a different idea after bishop takes b2. Quite an unusual idea actually, but it'll become clear the reasoning behind it afterwards. Carlsen anyway played queen f3. He shouldn't play bishop takes d3 because of bishop c3 here, and this back rank is actually a problem for white. The only move is rook b1 here, but just to illustrate, if white plays, for example, rook e2, when the same thing applies with rook c2 or rook a2, now comes rook takes d3. But the idea rook takes d3, queen b1 check is going to win the rook on d3, and so black will end up a piece ahead and win the game easily. So after bishop c3, the only move is a rook rook b1, and now black can play queen d4, and this keeps pressure on the bishop and on the rook. So white has to stay defending the bishop. So rook d1 is forced, and now rook f8, attacking f2 in conjunction with the queen. So queen g2, and now queen c5. She's getting out of the way of the rook. Bishop takes g6 was threatened. And after, for example, rook bc1, b4, and the advance of this passed pawn, and this is going to be a probable win. So white has to be very careful about how and when he gets the pawn back. The opposite bishop's position, as I said, is very dangerous for white here, and black's superior position gives him a wealth of tactical opportunities. Okay, so anyway, the game continuation was queen f3. Now Anand played bishop f6, which was a curious move. The time control was approaching, and he had perhaps 10 minutes left, whilst Carlsen had about 5. So this might explain this passive retreating move. The computers wanted bishop d4 with a subsequent play on the f-file against f2. But even then, it's hard to find a forcefully winning line. So as he'd done before, Carlsen is proving that he's very tough to beat, similarly to Anand. They're both opponents who are renowned for being very difficult to beat. So bishop f6, and now rook takes d3. Carlsen finally wins back one of the 2 pawns that he's down. The computers now give the position as equal, which is quite something and difficult to understand from a human perspective. Okay, white has the d-file and pressure on the light squares, but the b5 pawn should surely be a great concern here, but apparently not. And Anand now traded on d3, and Carlsen recaptured with his rook, although the engines preferred recapturing with the bishop. But again, it's not easy to inflict yourself with a kind of semi-pin after rook d8, unless of course you have a silicon brain or something like that. And here came a move that really surprised a lot of commentators and titled observers, rook d8, because now Carlsen's defensive task is much easier. Anand explained in the press conference that due to the opposite color bishops, his b pawn can never queen. So it's an interesting thing that's probably worth knowing for our own games, something I didn't know anyway. The computers, as I said, preferred bishop d4, attacking f2, the idea of playing rook f8, and black can create more pressure this way. For example, queen e2, with a certain idea in mind. If he plays queen d1, attacking the bishop, then bishop takes f2, king takes f2, queen takes e4, and this is surely a win. So queen e2, and after rook f8, bishop f3 can be played. And how does black increase the pressure here? White always has king g2 to further defend the bishop. So seeing this, Anand felt that there was therefore nothing more in the position, and he decided simply to trade off to a theoretically drawn situation. It is, however, at least a little surprising that he didn't try this instead. However, he's a world champion, and if he says it's a draw, I'll take his word for it. So Carlsen exchanged rooks after rook d8. So rook takes d8, bishop takes d8, and now the game is almost certainly a draw. So bishop d3 with the idea of playing queen e4. It's forking e6 and g6. So queen d4 to prevent that. This lets b5 drop, but as I said, Anand knew it was a draw at this point. So now he played queen f6, keeping everything solid. Everything is covered. And it's obviously completely clear here that he's playing for a draw. And there was even a rumor watching live that Anand offered a draw at this point, with Carlsen refusing. But don't quote me on that, because I'm not 100% sure if it's true. But if it is true, it was quite an interesting psychological exchange. So from here, the players merely neutralized any remaining plays. Queen b7 check, bishop e7, king g2, and now g5. Pretty much forces h takes g5, queen takes g5, bishop c4. Now h4 using the pin, so queen c7, and this is to enable h takes g3, queen takes g3, and by now, you know, it's actually very strange that they're both still carrying on. You know, perhaps if Anand had already offered a draw, he didn't want to offer a second time, and if Carlsen had refused, you know, he didn't want to offer at all. So play continued. e5, king f3, breaking the pin, queen takes g3, f takes g3, now bishop c5. You know, opposite color bishop endgames are notoriously easy to draw. This example is very simple, but sometimes one player can even be 2 or 3 pawns down and still draw easily. So next we saw king e4, attacking the e5 pawn. So bishop d4, and king f5, bishop f2, king takes e5, bishop takes g3 check. And now, finally, they shook hands. So it was definitely the most interesting and tense game so far. Anand said in the press conference afterwards that although it looked like there must be something there for black, there was apparently no forced win or way to exploit any of the advantages that were built up. The bishop pair, the extra pawn, better pieces, and so on. Carlsen's control and pressure down the A-file meant that any forceful play by black was always met with very strong counterplay. Carlsen was a little dazed and despondent and deflated in the press conference, saying that he was merely glad to survive, but it was clear that, you know, he wasn't happy at all with the way the game went, which is easy to understand, as the whole world is expecting him to produce glittering victories. But Anand, of course, has other ideas, and I think the reality of the difficulties Carlsen is going to face are becoming more real to everyone involved. Similarly to what the situation was after the first game, Anand now certainly has the psychological edge once more, and tomorrow he'll have the white pieces. So, you know, that's definitely something to watch and to consider. Making an estimation on how the match will pan out, it has to be said that Carlsen is often stronger in the later rounds of tournaments, and his youth gives him a definite advantage in that respect against Anand. He just has to make sure that he doesn't kind of lose hope with these kind of not 100% accurate games, and the fact that he's not really getting any active play against Anand. He has to just forget about it and move on to the next game. So tomorrow we'll see not only if Anand will open with e4 again, but also if Carlsen will play the Caro-Kann as he did in game 2. If so, it will be interesting to see what Anand and his team have decided to use against it. If not, then it will be great to see what Carlsen will play instead. So there's a reasonable chance, I think, that we'll see a Roy Lopez or something like that if Anand opens with e4, but we could see a Sicilian as well, which would be really great. Okay, so that's it for round 3. I'll be back tomorrow with a report from the 4th game. Hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.